Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation, we're going to take a look at how we can use Msfvenom to create a bind shell payload. A bind shell is a type of shell that opens up a new service on the target machine and requires the attacker to connect to it in order to get a session. Msfvenom is a command line instance of Metasploit used to generate various payloads for shellcode available in Metasploit. For this lab demonstration, I will be using one virtual install of Kali Linux, one virtual install of Metasploitable 3, and my virtual adapters are set to host-only networking. First things first, let's go ahead and get the IP address for our target machine. To do this, you're going to go ahead and log on to your Metasploitable 3 installation. Password is Vagrant, and log on as administrator. Once you have a desktop, just go to Start. Go ahead and grab the command prompt and let's launch that. And at the prompt, let's type in ipconfig. Now my IP address for my local area connection is 192.168.56.103. That's my IP address for my target. Your IP address may differ. Let's get back on over to our Kali machine. Now, to ensure that you have a trouble-free lab experience, go ahead and check for connectivity between your Kali machine and your target. To do this, you're going to open up a terminal on your Kali machine. You're going to type in ping, give it a space, the IP address of your target. At my prompt, I've typed in ping space 192.168.56.103. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and I have positive responses coming back from the target. Now, to break out of the sequence for ping, just go ahead and hit Control-C from your keyboard. Go ahead and close out your terminal. To begin this lab, we're going to need to create a work folder on our Kali machine. To do this, on your desktop for Kali, just right-click, and from the context menu, you're going to select Create Folder. You're going to give that folder a user-friendly name. I've called mine Shellcodes, all one word. You are free to name your folder whatever you choose. Once you've done that, just go ahead and hit the Create button. Once you have your work folder created, find it on your desktop, right-click on it, and from the context menu, you're going to select Open Terminal here. We're now ready to create a payload using Msfvenom that will establish the bind shell between my Kali machine and my target. So at the prompt, I've typed in Msfvenom, give it a space, dash small letter P, which stands for payload, give it a space, followed by the payload, which in this case is Windows/metapredator/bind_TCP. Give that a space. Now we have to type in the file type that we want to create. To do this, we need to use the dash small letter F switch. Give that a space, followed by exe. Give that a space. Now we need to save it to our working folder. To do this, we're going to use the greater than sign. Give that a space. Now we have to type in the path to our working folder on the desktop. To do this, we typed in /root/desktop/shellcodes/bind.exe. Go ahead and hit enter. Wait just a moment while it generates the code. Once it has generated the code, it will let you know that it completed successfully, and then we will go into the working folder and see what has been created. Payload has been created successfully. Let's go ahead and minimize our terminal. And if we open up our shellcodes folder, you'll see that we have a bind.exe file, which is our payload that we're going to deliver over to our target machine. The next thing we have to do is figure out a way to deliver the payload to the target. Now, the quick, down and dirty way is just to use Python to create a simple HTTP server to run inside our working folder that's going to default to port 8000. Let's see how we do this. Again, from my desktop, I'm going to find my working folder. I'm going to right-click, and from the context menu, select Open Terminal here. To create a web server inside of my working folder, I'm going to use a Python module that's going to allow me to create an HTTP server. So at the prompt, I've typed in Python 3, give it a space, dash small letter M, give it a space, HTTP dot server. Once you have all that typed in correctly, go ahead and hit enter. Now my HTTP server is listening on port 8000, ready for a connection from my target machine. Let's see how we do that. Let's go ahead and bring up our target machine. Let's go ahead and close out the terminal. Let's click on the Start button, and from the Start menu, let's select Internet Explorer. On this Setup Windows Internet Explorer 8, just go ahead and click the button that says Ask Me Later. To connect to the HTTP server that's running on my Kali machine, up here inside of my browser's address bar, I'm going to type in http:// followed by the IP address of my Kali machine. To get the IP address of your Kali machine, just go on back on over to your Kali, and you can start a new terminal. And at the terminal, you just type in ifconfig. And my IP address for my Kali machine is 192.168.56.101. And I'm looking at the IP address for my Ethernet 0 adapter. You can go ahead and close out that terminal. But make sure you leave the terminal that is running your HTTP server up. You can minimize it, but it must be left up and running. Let's go on back on over to my target. And up here in the address bar, I'm going to type in 192.168.56.101. Now I have to type in a colon, and I have to tell it the port number that it's going to be using, which is 8000, which is the default port for the simple HTTP server that I am running on my Kali machine. Once you have all that typed in correctly, just go ahead and hit enter. And once the HTTP server accepts the connection from my target machine, it pulls up the directory that's inside of my working folder. Inside of that working folder, it's listing the bind.exe file that we created using Msfvenom. Now all we have to do is convince the victim that they need to double click it, and they can either run it or they can save it. Preferably, they're going to go ahead and run it for us. This machine now has a service that is running and listing as a bind shell, waiting for a connection from our Kali machine. Let's go on back over to our Kali. Let's go ahead and open up a new terminal. And at the prompt, you're going to type in MSF console. Hit enter. We're now going to attempt to use Metasploit to establish a MetaPredator session with that target that is running that service for that bind shell. To do this, at the prompt for MSF6, I'm going to type in use exploit / multi-handler. So at the prompt, I've typed in use space exploit / multi / handler. Go ahead and hit enter. On this next prompt, we're going to type in the payload that we need. So we're going to set the payload as Windows / MetaPredator / bind_TCP. Once you have all that typed in correctly, go ahead and hit enter. We next have to type in the IP address of my target as rhost. So at the prompt, I've typed in set space rhost space the IP address of my target, which is 192.168.56.103. Go ahead and hit enter. Now remember, this is my IP address for my target. Your IP address for your target will differ. The last thing we have to do is set the listening port. So at the prompt, I type in set space L port space 4444. Go ahead and hit enter. And now we're ready to run the exploit that's going to establish the bind shell between my Kali machine and my target. To do this, at the prompt, I've typed in exploit. I hit enter, and immediately Metasploit discovers the service that is listening on port 4444 on the target machine for the IP address of 192.168.56.103 and establish the MetaPredator session. So in this short lab, you learned how to use Msfvenom to generate a bind shell payload, and you also learned how to use Python 3 to start a simple HTTP server. I'm Professor K. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.